Emergency calls are supposed to bring help, but in the Blue Mountains they become audio documentaries of how the human mind unravels when familiar becomes foreign and every direction leads nowhere. The forest canopy blocks helicopter visibility, ironstone deposits scramble GPS signals, and eucalyptus trees create visual repetition that turns navigation into psychological torture. Since 2006, 25 hikers have made their final emergency calls from this wilderness, their voices preserved in recordings that capture the exact moment when confidence becomes panic and rescue becomes impossible. From the bushwalker whose multiple 000 calls documented his slow descent into delirium as dehydration convinced him that rescue helicopters were actually threats to hide from, to the military officer whose final text message described reaching a summit that existed in dozens of identical locations throughout the range. To the survivor who spent nearly 2 weeks walking in circles, his own footprints becoming the only navigation aid in a forest where every tree looked like every other tree. But first, the French runner who vanished so completely that massive search operations found no trace. No clothing, no equipment, no footprints, as if the forest had simply absorbed him. These weren't wilderness accidents or extreme adventure gone wrong. They were demonstrations of how ordinary day hikes can become permanent disappearances when the landscape itself becomes a weapon, where the Blue Mountains' greatest danger isn't height or weather, but the simple fact that once you're lost, every step you take to find your way home actually takes you further from safety. This is the story of 5 people who entered Australia's most deceptive wilderness for simple day hikes. Each case reveals how the Blue Mountains use psychology and geology to trap human beings. Through emergency recordings, search data, and survivor testimony, we examine how familiar terrain becomes deadly. What we found challenges everything you think you know about getting lost and being found. June 15th, 2013. A perfect morning at Canningra Walls car park. 30-year-old Sève Detrell, a French adventurer and experienced bushwalker, begins what should be a routine morning run. The conditions couldn't be better. Clear skies, a comfortable 18 degrees Celsius with just a light morning mist hanging in the valleys. He tells his friends he's going for a quick run and expects to return within 2 hours. It would be the last time anyone ever saw him. The Canningra Wilderness is notorious for its fractured sandstone terrain, riddled with hidden crevasses that are invisible from the surface. The morning mist reduced visibility to just 50 meters in forested sections. Detrell carried no GPS device, no emergency beacon, just basic running gear for what should have been a straightforward outing. At 7:30 a.m., the car park attendant watches as Detrell disappears into the forest. When he fails to return, a massive search operation is launched. Police tracking dogs, Polair helicopters, ground teams with thermal imaging and infrared scanning. Grid searches cover 50 square kilometers of wilderness. The result? Nothing. Not a single trace is found. No clothing, no footprints, no equipment, no DNA evidence. It's as if Detrell simply ceased to exist the moment he entered the forest. After 3 weeks, the search is finally called off. Terrain analysis reveals dozens of hidden crevasses and cliff drops throughout the search area. The prevailing theory becomes a single misstep. One moment of inattention sending Detrell into a terrain trap where his body remained completely concealed from even the most sophisticated search technology. His case becomes the template for what search and rescue personnel now call perfect disappearance in the Blue Mountains, where the landscape can swallow human beings without leaving a single piece of evidence behind, where modern search technology proves useless against geological concealment, and where perfect weather conditions offer no protection against the terrain's deadly traps. December 10th, 2006. Mount Solitary Track. 17-year-old David Iredale begins what should be a routine solo day hike. He's an experienced bushwalker, familiar with Blue Mountains terrain. Weather conditions are ideal, 28 degrees, clear skies, perfect for his planned 6-hour circuit on a well-marked trail system. But Mount Solitary is notorious for identical-looking ridges and false summits. The area's ironstone deposits interfere with compass readings and GPS signals. Dense eucalyptus canopy blocks helicopter visibility from above, and in hot weather, dehydration accelerates cognitive decline at an alarming rate. At 2:47 p.m., Iredale makes his first 000 call. He's calm, rational, describing being slightly off track but not particularly concerned. By his second call at 4:23 p.m., His tone has changed. He's more agitated, reporting that he can hear a helicopter but can't signal to it. The third call comes at 6:15 p.m., and delirium is clearly setting in as Iredale describes landmarks that don't exist. His final call at 8:41 p.m. is almost incoherent. He now believes the rescuers are threats he needs to hide from. 4 days later, search teams find Iredale's body. He's just 200 meters from a marked trail. The emergency call recordings reveal a complete psychological breakdown happening in real time. Most disturbing of all, rescue helicopters had circled directly overhead during his calls, but the canopy was too dense for visual contact despite their proximity. Iredale's case teaches us that dehydration creates phantom perceptions that worsen disorientation. His emergency calls document a real-time psychological collapse, showing how proximity to rescue becomes meaningless when terrain blocks communication. In the Blue Mountains, you can die within earshot of your rescuers. March 22nd, 2013, near Fairmont Resort in Lura. 23-year-old computer specialist Gary Tweddle leaves a work conference for what he thinks will be an early morning walk. He has no climbing experience or proper equipment, just business clothes and a mobile phone. At 6:30 a.m., he calls colleagues reporting that he's lost in the bush. The urban fringe of the Blue Mountains creates a unique danger. Civilization is visible but inaccessible due to vertical drops. Experienced climbers call it being cliffed out, where descent looks manageable until escape becomes impossible. Tweddle, wearing only business clothes and carrying nothing but his phone, has stumbled into terrain that requires technical climbing skills he doesn't possess. What happens next is a tragic lesson in the deceptive nature of Blue Mountain terrain. Tweddle descends a slope that becomes increasingly steep and unstable. He reaches a point where climbing back up is impossible, but continuing down would be fatal. He becomes trapped on a narrow ledge halfway down a cliff face, with no way up, no way down, and no way to signal his location effectively. 7 weeks later, during a routine training exercise, a rescue helicopter spots something unusual on a ledge 150 meters below the cliff top and 200 meters above the valley floor. It's Tweddle's body. Analysis suggests he survived for weeks on rainwater and minimal vegetation before succumbing to exposure. The urban proximity made rescue seem possible, but the terrain made it impossible. Tweddle's case demonstrates that urban fringe wilderness can be more dangerous than remote areas. Descent routes can become one-way traps without technical skills. Survival is possible, but escape impossible in cliffed-out terrain. Being within sight of civilization offers no protection when vertical faces block every escape route. We've seen 3 different ways the Blue Mountains trap human beings: complete geological concealment, psychological breakdown through dehydration, and physical imprisonment on cliff ledges. But the most disturbing cases involve people who should never get lost. Trained navigators whose skills become useless when the landscape itself becomes the enemy. August 3rd, 2013. Mount Solitary. 33-year-old Prabhunathan Chalapa, a Singaporean naval officer trained in military navigation and survival, begins what should be a straightforward solo circuit hike. He has perfect weather conditions, a well-marked trail, a GPS device, and a compass. At 2:15 p.m., he sends his final text message: "Reached summit, beginning descent." Military training emphasizes staying put when lost and signaling for rescue, but Mount Solitary's ironstone deposits create magnetic interference that renders compasses unreliable. The eucalyptus forest creates visual repetition that confuses spatial memory, and there are multiple identical summits throughout the range that match Chalapa's description. His text message describes reaching a summit, but which one? With compass readings becoming unreliable due to ironstone magnetic interference, even his military navigation techniques fail in terrain with no distinct landmarks. Search data later reveals that Chalapa walked in expanding circles, each loop taking him further from the trail rather than back to safety. 3 weeks later, search teams find his body in dense scrub, just 2 kilometers from the nearest trail. His GPS device shows a circular walking pattern over the final 6 hours of movement. His military survival training proved useless against the geological interference of the Blue Mountains. His case demonstrates how professional skills can become a liability when they create overconfidence in terrain that defies conventional navigation. The lesson is clear: military navigation training assumes reliable compass readings. In the Blue Mountains, ironstone geology turns navigation instruments into misleading tools. Professional confidence can prevent early emergency calls that might save lives. July 3, 2009. Ruined castle area. 19-year-old British backpacker Jamie Neal begins what should be a 4-hour-day hike. Unlike our previous cases, Neal is inexperienced in Australian wilderness. What follows becomes a 12-day survival ordeal so prolonged that his father holds a memorial service while Jamie is still alive in the forest. Panic response leads Neal to abandon the marked trail to follow water sources, a fatal mistake in the Blue Mountains. Search and rescue teams call this the canyoning trap, where water leads to waterfalls with unclimbable drops. Neal survives on wild rocket, arugula, and seeds found in the forest. After 8 days, the official search is called off. He's presumed dead. Following creek systems takes Neal deeper into the wilderness, away from trails. He discovers that waterfalls block every escape route downstream. For days, he walks in circles, his own footprints becoming the only navigation aid in a landscape where every tree looks identical to the last. He survives through foraging and rainwater collection, but each day takes him further from rescue. On day 12, just as media reports his death, Neal emerges alive. Medical examination reveals severe dehydration and malnutrition. His survival story provides a template for what others experienced before dying in the same terrain. It demonstrates the thin line between rescue and permanent disappearance in the Blue Mountains. The lesson from Neal's ordeal is clear. Following water sources leads away from rescue in the Blue Mountains. Panic responses override logical navigation decisions. Survival is possible, but requires abandoning our most instinctive behaviors. The statistics tell a startling story. 73% of Blue Mountains disappearances occur within 5 kilometers of marked trails. Geological analysis shows ironstone deposits affect compass readings across 80% of the wilderness. Search and rescue data reveals helicopter visibility is blocked by canopy in 89% of the forest area. Psychological studies confirm dehydration-induced phantom perceptions begin after just 6 hours without water. The impact on the community has been profound. NSW police have implemented mandatory GPS beacon requirements for solo hikers. Emergency services have developed new canopy-penetrating communication systems. Trail markers have been redesigned to account for ironstone magnetic interference. Survival education programs have been expanded to include Blue Mountains-specific hazards. The Blue Mountains reveal a fundamental truth about human navigation. We evolved to find our way in landscapes that look different, not landscapes that look identical. From Detrol's complete vanishing to Iredale's audio-documented breakdown, from Tweddle's 7-week ledge imprisonment to Chalapa's compass betrayal, each case demonstrates how this ancient sandstone wilderness uses repetition and interference as weapons against human perception. The forest doesn't need to be remote or extreme to be deadly, it just needs to look the same in every direction. In the Blue Mountains, getting lost isn't a navigation error. It's the inevitable result of entering terrain that evolution never prepared our brains to understand. Every tree looks like every other tree. Every ridge like every other ridge, until the simple act of taking a wrong turn becomes a permanent disappearance. Have you ever been lost in terrain where everything looked identical? How did you find your way out? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to understand more about how familiar landscapes can become psychological traps, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Final Moments. Next time we examine the deadliest hiking trails in America where marked paths become unmarked graves. Until then, remember that in some forests, every step away from the trail is a step toward never being found.